اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. عن جابر بن عبد الله الأنصاري أنه قال عن فاطمة الزهراء عليها السلام بنت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله قال: سمعت فاطمة أنها قالت: دخل علي أبي رسول الله في بعض أيام فقال: السلام عليك يا فاطمة. فقلت: عليك السلام. قال: إني أجدت في بدني ضعفا. فقلت له: أعيذك بالله يا أبتاه من الضعف. فقال: يا فاطمة ائتيني بالكساء اليماني فقطعيني به. فأتيته بالكساء اليماني فقطعيته به وصرت أنظر إليه وإذا وجهه يتلألأ كأنه البدر في ليلة تمامه وكماله، فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسن قد أقبل وقال: السلام عليك يا أماه. فقلت: وعليك السلام يا غرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي. فقال: يا أماه إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جدي رسول الله. فقلت: نعم إن جدك تحت الكساء. فأقبل الحسن نحو الكساء وقال: السلام عليك يا جداه يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أدخل معك تحت الكساء؟ فقال: وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا صاحب حوضي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل معه تحت الكساء فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسين قد أقبل وقال: السلام عليك يا أماه. فقلت: وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا غرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي. فقال لي: يا أماه إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جدي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله. فقلت: نعم إن جدك وأخاك تحت الكساء. فدنا الحسين نحو الكساء وقال: السلام عليك يا جداه، السلام عليك يا من اختاره الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكما تحت الكساء؟ فقال: وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا شافع أمتي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل معهما تحت الكساء. فأقبل عند ذلك أبو الحسن علي بن أبي طالب وقال: السلام عليك يا بنت رسول الله. فقلت: وعليك السلام يا أبا الحسن ويا أمير المؤمنين. فقال: يا فاطمة إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة أخي وابن عمي ورسول الله. فقلت: نعم ها هو مع ولديك تحت الكساء. فأقبل علي نحو الكساء وقال: السلام عليك يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ قال له: وعليك السلام يا أخي ويا وصي وخليفتي وصاحب لوائي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل علي تحت الكساء. ثم أتيت نحو الكساء وقلت: السلام عليك يا أبتاه يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ قال: وعليك السلام يا بنتي ويا بضعتي، قد أذنت لك. فدخلت تحت الكساء. فلما اكتملنا جميعا تحت الكساء أخذ أبي رسول الله بطرف الكساء وأومأ بيده اليمنى إلى السماء وقال: اللهم إن هؤلاء أهل بيتي وخاصتي وعامتي، لحمهم لحمي ودمهم دمي، يؤلمني ما يؤلمهم ويحزنني ما يحزنهم. أنا حرب لمن حاربكم وسلم لمن سالمكم، وعدو لمن عاداهم ومحب لمن أحبهم. إنهم مني وأنا منهم، فاجعل صلواتك وبركاتك ورحمتك وغفرانك ورضوانك علي وعليهم، وأذهب عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. محمد. فقال الله عز وجل: يا ملائكتي ويا سكان سماواتي، إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدحية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضيء ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا في محبة هؤلاء الخمسة الذين هم تحت الكساء. فقال الأمين جبرائيل: يا رب ومن تحت الكساء؟ فقال عز وجل: لهم أهل بيت النبوة ومعدن الرسالة، هم فاطمة وأبوها وبعلها وبنوها. الله. فقال جبرائيل: يا رب أتأذن لي أن أحبط إلى الأرض لأكون معهم سادسا؟ فقال الله: نعم، قد أذنت لك. فحبط الأمين جبرائيل وقال: السلام عليك يا رسول الله العلي الأعلى، يغرئك السلام ويخصك بالتحية والإكرام، ويقول لك: وعزتي وجلالي إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدحية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضيء ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا لأجلكم ومحبتكم، وقد أذن لي أن أدخل معكم، فهل تأذن لي يا رسول الله؟ فقال رسول الله: وعليك السلام يا أمين وحي الله، إنه نعم، قد أذنت لك. فدخل جبرائيل معنا تحت الكساء، فقال لأبي: إن الله قد أوحى إليكم يقول: إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. فقال علي لأبي: يا رسول الله، أخبرني ما لجلوسنا هذا تحت الكساء من الفضل عند الله. فقال النبي: والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واصطفاني بالرسالة نجيا، ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا إلا ومن نزلت عليهم الرحمة وحفت بهم الملائكة واستغفرت لهم إلى أن يتفرقوا. فقال علي: إذا والله فزنا وفاز شيعتنا ورب الكعبة. فقال النبي ثانيا: يا علي، والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واصطفاني بالرسالة نجيا، ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا وفيهم محموم إلا وفرج الله حمه، ولا مغموم إلا وكشف الله غمه، ولا طالب حاجة إلا وقضى الله حاجته. فقال علي: إذا والله فزنا وسعدنا وكذلك شيعتنا، فازوا وسعدوا في الدنيا والآخرة ورب الكعبة. اللهم صل على محمد. سورة المباركة الفاتحة.
ما شاء الله لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل، نعم المولى ونعم النصير. ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي جعل الحمد مفتاحا لذكره وسببا للمزيد من فضله ودليلا على آلائه وعظمته. ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على النبي الأمي المكي المدني الهاشمي الذي سمي في السماوات بأحمد وفي الأراضين بأبي القاسم محمد. وعلى أهل بيته الأطيبين الأطهرين، سيما أولهم أمير المؤمنين وآخرهم بقية الله في الأراضين، روحي وأرواح العالمين لتراب مقدمه الفداء. ورحمة الله على محبيهم ومواليهم وشيعتهم أجمعين، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم ملعونين. أما بعد, for the happiness of Hazrat Zahra Marziyah, for the enlightenment of the graves of your marhumin, of the graves of the Shahada, Ulama and Siddiqeen, for the safety of the followers of Ahl al-Bayt around the world, and for the safety and the hastening of the reappearance of Hazrat Baqiyatullah al-A'zam Arwahun al-Fida, please recite your loudest salawat. All praise due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one who is Rahman and the one who is Rahim. We have gathered together to celebrate the birth of that individual that was known as the greatest blessing upon the Shi'as. When Imam al-Jawad was born, Imam al-Radha salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhi, tells his companion Yahya, he says to him, Ya Yahya, هذا المولود الذي لم يولد في الإسلام مثله مولود أعظم بركة على شيعتنا من. He says that, oh Yahya, there has been no child like this child that has ever been born. There is no greater blessing that has been born as a greater blessing upon our Shi'as other than this child. The wujud of Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam is a huge blessing upon the Shi'as. It's a different matter whether the Shi'as understand that themselves or not. It is unfortunate that we have in our minds created these big Imams and small Imams. In just a few days you will see that there won't be anywhere to park. There won't be any place to sit when it comes to the 13th of Rajab and the birth of Amirul Mu'mineen. But yet when it comes to the wujud of Imam al-Jawad, for example, then our masajid, and it's not just here, it's all over, remain not even, or don't even reach quarter of their capacity. And this is because of our lack of understanding of the latter Imams, our lack of desire to understand the latter Imams. But when one truly looks at each of their personalities and sees exactly what particular role they had in the world, because as I've said before, the names of the A'imma alayhimus salam are not names like ours. Ours are just simply labels that are attached to this sack of meat. But when it comes to the A'imma alayhimus salam, their names are indicative of the various roles and responsibilities that they had within this dunya. So when someone is al-Hadi, it is because he is guiding all of mankind. And we spoke about it on the night of Imam al-Hadi, or Imam al-Kadhim day, where we said that Imam al-Hadi had to deal with all of these various deviations that had occurred at his time. And so he manifests that hidayah in his very wujud. Although all of the Imams are Hadi, all of the Imams are Jawad, all of the Imams have these various characteristics within them, but it is what at that time that Imam manifests the most in that time. And so these titles that they have are not just normal names. And so when we reach the end of this lecture, inshallah, we'll have a deeper understanding of whom Imam al-Jawad is and what he actually means to us in our lives, living now all of these centuries later. Please recite loud salawat. And I said that from the time of on Imam al-Kadhim Day that there was a significant change. One of those significant changes was that the mothers of the Imams now all come from Africa. And the same is with the mother of Imam al-Jawad. She is from what is known as, right now, Noba. Al-Noba, so some argue either it's modern day Egypt or modern day Sudan. You know, there's a discussion there. But again, this tradition from which carries on from the sixth Imam marrying and then Imam al-Kadhim, then continuing this line on. That's one significant change that happens. The second significant thing about the life of Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam, now for the first time, Zahiran, in the history of the Ahlul Bayt, a child, Zahiran, a child on the apparent, has become the Imam. Up until this point, all of the Imams were adults. But with the Imam al-Jawad, the Imam al-Hadi, and to the Imam of our time, now you have children. And Imam al-Hadi is at the age of 8 when he becomes an Imam. And so, for many of his Shi'as, this was a very difficult concept to grasp. Even now, you know, if we were presented with a child Imam, it would be very difficult for us to grasp, for us to comprehend that how is it possible that we can listen to this child for all of our fiqh mas'alas due to our lack of understanding of imamat. And at the same time, the Shias of the time also had this problem. But there is one very interesting thing that happens during the time of Imam al-Hadi, or that technically doesn't happen in the time of Imam al-Hadi, but happened in the times of all the other previous Imams up until this point. And that is, at the death of the preceding Imam, a deviancy occurs. A group shoots off. So when you have, for example, the Zaydiyya group, or you have the Ismailiyya group upon the death of the sixth Imam, the Waqifiyya movement, the different movements that are coming, here at the time of Imam al-Jawad, this isn't there. And there is a specific reason for it. There's no splinter group. No one turns around and says, oh, you know what, Imam al-Rada was the Mahdi and he's gone into Ghaiba. Now when Imam al-Jawad, an 8-year-old child, where for all intents and purposes, if ever there was to be a deviancy that should have occurred, it should have been here. It only makes sense, right? Because now we're being told an 8-year-old is now the Imam. So surely there would have been some sort of splinter here. But in the time of Imam al-Jawad, there is no splinter. There is no offshoot. And why is that? Because the khawas, those that were individuals of authority, those that were prominent Shi'as, stepped up and raised their voice. Whereas in the previous times of the previous Imams, they were either oppressed or too afraid to come out and speak in the face of these deviancies. Some spoke, but their voices weren't heard because they were not as prominent as those individuals that should have spoke. But here you see, in the time of Imam al-Jawad, the khawas, they stand up in the face of this deviancy. So when the death of Imam al-Rada breaks in Medina, and the people have gathered and they know that now Imam al-Jawad is to be the Imam. Yunus ibn Abdul Rahman, one of the close companions of Imam al-Rada, a very good Shia, he stands up and he says, look, what we need to do for Imam al-Jawad is organize a system of guardianship for him. Because until he reaches the age of bulugh, then he can guide us. Right now he's a child. Yeah? Yunus ibn Abdul Rahman. He stands up. He says this. As soon as he says this, Rayyan ibn Salt, another one of the companions of Imam al-Radha, stands up, grabs him by the collar and slaps him around the face. Says, what are you talking about? Do you think that an imam is defined by age? Do you think an imam is restricted by age? Do you not see how Isa spoke from the cradle? Do you not see how Yahya came as a prophet from the moment that he was born? Do you think that the imam is bound by age? See, it was these khawas that stood up, that stopped any sort of deviancy occurring. The second individual of note in that time was a man by the name of Ali ibn Ja'far. He is the son of Imam al-Sadiq, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayh. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Around the time he's around 90 years old, and time of Imam al-Jawad. Those of you that are, inshallah, soon going to Iran, he is buried near the Haram of Hazrat Ma'asuma in Gulzar-e-Shuhada. He has a whole dome and everything. Ali ibn Ja'far. He was a huge scholar, a person who would lead multiple classes at that time in Medina. He was well known amongst the people. 90 years old. But whenever Imam al-Jawad would enter into the room, this 90-year-old man would stand up and run towards the Imam to greet him. Would greet him, then he would go and he would fix the shoes of the Imam. And the whole time that the Imam was sitting in the gathering, this man would stand at the back out of respect for the Imam, 90 years old. But he stood at the back out of respect of the Imam alayhi salam. And when the Imam would leave, he would run, straighten the shoes of the Imam, present them to the Imam would wear them and go. When his students saw this happening, they said to him, look, you are such an elder, you are a scholar, you're doing all of this. It doesn't look good for this 8-year-old child. I know he may be the Imam, but you're his elder. Ali ibn Ja'far, he said to them, he said, look, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with this white beard of mine and this age of mine, did not select me for Imamat. But there was something within this 8-year-old boy that Allah selected him for Imamat. The Imam is not bound by age. Now that you know he is the Imam, you submit to him. Whatever he wants you do, and you serve that individual. So these were the khawas that came, the prominent people in society that came forward and stopped any sort of deviation occurring at the time of Imam al-Jawad. And if there were anyone that was in doubt of the imamat of the Imam, the first khutbah that the Imam himself delivers silences all of them and explains to them what the maqam of an Imam is. 8 years old, the Imam ascends on the minbar. He addresses the people. He says to them, Ana Muhammad ibn Ali al-Radha an al-Jawad. Ana al-alimu bi-ansab al-nas fil aslab. Says, I am Muhammad ibn Ali, the son of al-Radha. I am Jawad, the generous. I hold the knowledge of your children that are still within your loins. أنا أعلم بسرائركم وظواهركم وما أنتم صائرون إليه. Says that I have the knowledge of your apparent and that which is hidden from you, and I am aware what your future holds. Imam is explaining what the ilm of the Imam is. Even before this point, during the Imamat of Imam al-Radha, this is the famous story. Ma'mun has gone hunting, he comes back, he sends out his eagle. The eagle brings in the middle of a desert a fish, a tiny little fish. In its claws, hand, Ma'mun takes it, holds on to it. He comes back to see children playing, and all the children scatter and run away. And he sees one child still there. Says, why didn't you run? Says, I have nothing to fear from you. Why should I run? Says, who are you? He says, I am Al-Jawad ibn al-Rida. Says, okay. Says, tell me something. What do I have in my hand? Do you know what is in my hand? The Imam looks at him. He says, O king, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this world has created oceans. And above these oceans, clouds form. And at times, small fishes from these oceans are raised towards these clouds and are carried by the winds into the claws of the eagles of the kings, so that they may bring them to try and test the children of Zahra. Says, I know what is in your hand. So the Imam is saying, I know of your zahir, I know of your batin, I know of your future. I know everything about you. علم منحنا به من قبل الخلق أجمعين وبعد فناء السماوات والأرضين. This is a knowledge that has been bestowed upon us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala before the creation of creation, and it will remain with us long after the earth and the heavens have been destroyed. This knowledge will remain with us. ولولا تظاهر أهل الباطل ودولة أهل الضلال وثوب أهل الشك لقلت قولا تعجب منه الأولون والآخرون. He says, were it not for the oppressors, were it not for these people of falsehood, this corrupt government, I would have told you something that would have shocked you all and those of you to come. And then the narration says, ثم وضع يده الشريف على فيه. He says, the narration says, then all of a sudden he placed his hand on his mouth. And he said to himself, Ya Muhammad, O Muhammad, be quiet. Be quiet in the way that your forefathers were quiet. Says at that point he stayed quiet. He came down from the minbar and he walked away. Because certain realities people are not ready for. People aren't ready for them. The Imam speaks to a person at the level of that person. And that's why you have different people coming to the Imam to ask different questions, and each of them getting a different answer based upon their level of understanding. And so here the Imam, looking at the crowd, holds himself back. So stay quiet, like your forefathers also stayed quiet. The realities of that knowledge that is hidden within the Imam is not accessible, is not available to every single person. So that was the first test of the Imam, that young age. But the people accepted, because the khawas of society, those that were the important people of that society, stopped any sort of deviancy occurring. The second thing to note from the life of the Imam is that his name itself, generosity, Al-Jawad. You know, I often say to people who go to ziyarah in Iraq that Baghdad is one of those places people just go, Kadhimiya, and it's like a day trip. Like, I'm going. You know, just go there, touch, and go. Because we don't have time. And this is one of the biggest unfortunate things that we do on our ziyarah tours, that we don't give Kadhimiya its importance. But I say to people that go there, how is it possible that you can leave Kadhimiya without having been granted what you asked for? Because you stand at the door of two Imams. On one side is the Imam that is Babul Hawa'ij, and on the other side is Al-Jawad. The one that is the door to your wishes and the other one that is generous. How is it possible that you could leave Kadhimiya without your wishes being answered? But it goes back to that thing again that I started with. Small Imams, big Imams. And so we don't really feel that connection there. But there is a very specific rizq that is attached to Imam al-Jawad. And these moments of rizq, the Urafan speak about it, they only become known around the time of the Wilada or the Shahada of the Imam, around these specific Ayyamullah, these specific days of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is a specific sustenance that is available to each of us. But we have to tap into that frequency to be able to unlock that which is hidden. In the same way that there is a secret that is hidden in Laylatul Qadr or on the 15th of Sha'ban. All of these realities, these rizq, the sustenance is hidden in these moments. And so one has to try and connect with the individual whom we commemorate, whom we celebrate on that day, to try and gain something. You know, I often ask people that, what is it that you gained from Sayyid al-Shuhada in the 10 nights of Muharram? If you didn't gain anything, even if it was something as simple as changing something in your personality, that's barakah from the Imam. But if I haven't changed and I'm the same, then I'm not tapping into that frequency. What is it that I will take away tonight and tomorrow day? Can I tap into that frequency of Imam al-Jawad? Because he is the generous. He was so generous that the people of his time, they called him Bab al-Murad. Bab al-Murad. It's not in any riwayah, it's not attached to any hadith, but it was common amongst the people that he would be known as Bab al-Murad. When someone comes to the Imam, he says to him, Ya ibn Rasulillah, please give me something equivalent to your karam, equivalent to your magnanimity. The Imam says, I can't. He says, I can't. Why? Because the karam of the Imam is derived from Allah being Kareem. Allah being Kareem, Allah is limitless. So the karama of the Imam is limitless. Now this man is saying, give to me equivalent to your magnanimity, equivalent to your generosity. The Imam saying, I can't. Because my generosity and my magnanimity is limitless. So I can't. So he says, okay, Imam, you give to me according to my station. So the Imam gives him 200 dinar. Now sometimes we don't quantify this. We hear this. Oh, the Imam gave 500 dinar. The Imam gave 200 dinar. The Imam. What does it actually mean? So I did some workings out of 200 dinar. It's equivalent to 32,000 plus pounds. The Imam gave him. Just like that. Gold coins, 200 gold coins. 32,000 plus pounds that the Imam just gave him. The Imam is Jawad, the generous. When Imam al-Radha was in Marv and he'd been taken there, he was informed that Imam al-Jawad, the servants of the house, were taking the young Imam out from the back door in order to avoid the crowds in front of the house that were begging. And Imam al-Radha writes him a letter. He says, my son, it's come to my attention that those that have been tasked with guarding you, the servants, they're taking you from the back door of the home in order to avoid the people. He says, I'm not happy with this. Make sure from now on, you always leave the home from the front door. And whoever comes to you, you give them whatever they want. This is Imam al-Jawad. An Imam who was tasked with generosity in this dunya. Imagine then what you can gain from him on this day. Even up until now, that jood of the Imam, that generosity of the Imam can be of benefit to his Shi'as. It's not commonly known amongst us, but we have Dua Tawassul, which is the one that is commonly recited. But there is a Dua Tawassul which is غير معروف, which is not well known. But in there, each of the specific particular ma'muriyat, the responsibilities of the imams is discussed. And it says, if you want to do tawassul to this imam, then ask for this. And when it comes to Imam al-Jawad, it says, if you want the khair of the dunya, everything regarding the dunya, you should do tawassul to Imam al-Jawad. All of those things. It goes through each of the imams. It says that, for example, if you want happiness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you want steadfastness in your obedience, then use the tawassul of the Holy Prophet, Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam al-Hasan, Imam al-Hussein, and Hazrat Zahra. So these five, use them in order to, if you want steadfastness in your religion, you want steadfastness in your obedience. It says if you want revenge on your enemies, then use the tawassul of Amir al-Mu'mineen, use the wasila of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Or if you want to be saved from an oppressor, then use the wasila of Imam al-Sajjad. Or if you want to have siha, good health, both in your body and your soul, then you go to Imam al-Kadhim's door. Use the wasila of Imam al-Kadhim. Or if you want safety in your journey, then go to the door of Imam al-Radha. But when it comes to Imam al-Jawad, in that dua, it's how we address the Imam. It says, oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, say, Allahumma inni as'aluka bihaqqi waliyyaka Muhammad ibn Ali alayhi salam illa jutta bihi alayya min fadlik wa tafaddalta bihi alayya min wus'ik wa wasa'ta alayya rizqak. Says that, oh Allah, for the sake of your wali Muhammad ibn Ali, I ask you to bless me with your good favors from your generosity and expand my rizq. So when one wants the dunya, they go and they knock at the door of Imam al-Jawad. And that's not just wealth. It's anything that you want in the dunya. And as I said the other day in regards to Imam al-Kadhim, the jood or the karam of Ahl al-Bayt extends outside or beyond that of the Shi'as. Imam al-Hadi is writing or doing dua for Mutawakkil. His mother does nadhar to Imam al-Hadi and Mutawakkil is cured. So the Imam is Imam for all of existence. Imam al-Jawad is no different. Every Shia knows about the hairs of Imam al-Jawad. But originally this hairs was given to Ma'mun, the oppressor of the time. He comes to Imam al-Jawad, he says, give me a hairs that will keep me safe. And that famous hairs that we know as hairs of Imam al-Jawad is what then Imam gives him. Hairs is a dua or a dhikr, or an incantation, as it were, to keep a person safe from the different trials and tribulations. And we have multiple hairs. When you go and you open Mafatih and the other books, you'll see there's the hairs of the Holy Prophet, hairs of Amir al-Mu'mineen, hairs of Hazrat Fatima, all of this. But the most authentic, according to our scholars, is the hairs of Imam al-Jawad. As in, we can say 100%, this is what Imam al-Jawad himself recommended. And in Mafatih, if you look under it, Sheikh Abbas Qummi, he only brings 2 lines from the full dua. But the full hairs is a lot longer. Sayyid ibn Tawus in his book Muhajjad Da'wat has the whole hairs that one can write down. And then it has to be handwritten on anything. Some say deer skin or whatever, but whatever it is has to be made by the Muslims. So the pen that you use must be made by Muslims. The paper on which you inscribe must be made by Muslims. The ink, you must do wudu, you must face qibla, can't be qamar dar aqrab. These are all the various parts in when one wants to write a hairs or a ta'weez, or not the bad type of ta'weez. There's good amulets and things, but all of these things need to be adhered to before one actually goes to write these things. So Imam al-Jawad writes it for Ma'mun, and he gives it to him. Now the question again is, why did the Imam give this to Ma'mun, prolonging his life? And the ulama have said, maybe the reason was the Imam knew if Ma'mun is to go, someone far worse will come in his place. That would make the lives of the Shi'as even worse. And so the Imam thought it prudent at that time to give him something. Then the second thing is that the Imam is still the Imam of even the oppressors. And so their karam is not bound just only to their Shi'as. It's Imam al-Jawad. So on this night, what we can hope for is connection to the absolute generosity, the limitless generosity of the Imam. Because the Imam draws directly from the names of Allah, the Wali Tam, the one that exists at the highest realm of Wilaya, beyond which there is no curtain between the Wali of God and God. Rather, the Wali is the curtain between existence and God. This is the highest state. And it is at that point that the Wali of Allah draws directly from the faith and the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala within his own wujud, and then from there it is then distributed amongst the rest of existence. And the ulama, they give the example of that it's like a mother whom eats all of these various foods. If she was to give those foods directly to her children, it would kill them. So she consumes it, her body digests it, and produces milk that she then feeds her child, something that that child can consume. Says that is exactly how it works with the A'imma, the Holy Prophet, that they take the faith from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all the blessings from Allah direct. They dissolve them within their own wujud, and through the barakah of their wujud, the rest of existence continues to receive their rizq, their life, their sight. All of these things that are attached to Allah comes through the lens of wilaya, through the lens of the wali of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The wali of Allah doesn't manifest anything from himself. Nothing is bidhat from his essence. Everything is but from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That he takes, he digests, and then he then passes on. So this karam of the Imam, this generosity of the Imam is available to us from this night into tomorrow day. There is a very specific rizq, door of rizq that has opened upon this birth of the Imam, that each and every one of us has access to. We just need to be able to get there. Many a times it is a matter of the heart. I said the other day as well that the heart is your connection. Many things that are happening are not happening in front of us here. We see the zahiri aspects of things. We see the clouds moving, we see the trees growing, but all of that is being powered by the malakut, that unseen realm that runs parallel. Everything is happening within the malakut of the alam that is then powering what you see in front of you here. And if you want to receive the faith of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala via the Ahlul Bayt, one needs to be able to access that angelic realm, or the barzakhi realm, different names. It's the semi-material realm. To be able to access that realm, that requires a pure heart. القلب يتردد بين الملك والملكوت. The heart is the thing that takes you from the mulk to the malakut. It is your revolving door into both of these realms, but it requires a pure heart. A heart that has been purified through istighfar. It's the month of Rajab. We're going into Sha'ban. We're heading towards the holy month of Ramadan. And it's a purification process. To reach the spiritual peak, that is Laylatul Qadr, where there is a very specific rizq that is available at that moment in those nights. A rizq that the Imam himself goes through a 3-month spiritual exercise to be able to take that amr that is descending on that day. It is as if the Imam at that point is almost like a merger of the realms, because the whole malakut is being drawn in towards the mulk, towards the wujud of the hujjah of Allah, as he receives this. And we just benefit from its rays that are coming off of it. But to truly benefit from it, we have to be ready to be able to unlock the secrets of the night of Qadr. To truly understand this rizq and what is available. And to truly get to the depth of the night of Qadr, it requires wilaya. Without wilaya of Ahlul Bayt, you can't achieve anything. And very specifically for the night of Qadr, the wilayat of Zahra Marziya alayha salam. You need the wilayah. من عرف فاطمة حق معرفتها فقد أدرك ليلة القدر. The one that understands Fatima as is her right to be understood. فقد أدرك ليلة القدر. He has discovered the night of Qadr. She is that being whose wilaya, whose ma'rifah will unlock for you the night of Qadr. Don't consider the Imams to be just personalities that we talk about, we come and we mourn and we... No, there is far more beyond the apparent that is going on. Just go and read Ziyarah Jami'a Kabira. Look at the maqam of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. And so to be able to benefit from that specific rizq that is available on this night and tomorrow day, you need to tune into the frequency of Imam al-Jawad. And how is it that you tune into the frequency of any one of the Imams around their shahadat and their wiladat? You look and you analyze, you try and mold your life around that Imam, or at least make the intention to do so. At least try in some way. And so when we look at the multiple narrations from the Imam, but there's one that I just want to briefly look at in the few minutes that I have left remaining. The Imam talks about the completion of Iman and how it is that one can complete the Iman. And he gives a very simple, straightforward method. There's no complex, dhikr here. There's no complex a'mal. There's no long, we don't like that sort of stuff. That stuff tires us out. I can sit with my friends until 3, 4 a.m., 5 a.m., 6 a.m. without batting an eyelid. But come to Laylatul Qadr and I'm looking for a wall to go and lean against, to sit on, to stretch out my legs and I'm hoping that somehow I'm going to receive the divine majesty. Imagine on a night where your destiny is being finalized and you're in front of, and I've said the whole malakut is being pulled towards the mulk. And it's hinged on this one night. And you have people that are like, oh no, I'm tired, man. I'm going to go home and sleep. Or you have people there that are hoping to achieve the divine majesty and are saying, yeah, I'm praying to Allah, and their legs are stretched out in front of them. They're leaning against the wall. Bika ya Allah, bika ya Allah. As if Allah is going to look at their body language and be like, wow, my abd, where have you been all this time? Ubudiyya is not just the words that you utter. It is your very demeanor. When I go to Allah, do I go to Him as a beggar? I don't. I sit there and I'm just like, oh, okay, look, hook me up if you can. If not, okay. I don't go as a beggar. I don't sit as a beggar in front of Allah. I don't weep. I don't raise my hands. And this is all goes back to that connection with the heart. That if I can't cry when I do dua, when I even just think of what is available to me on the night of Qadr, and it doesn't break my heart, it doesn't, when I reach the time of Fajr, I'm not letting out a sigh of relief, I'm letting out a sigh of sorrow that the night of Qadr has finished. But because I haven't accustomed myself, I haven't fallen in love with ubudiyya, I haven't fallen in love with Allah, so I can't fall in love with the worship. So that light of Iman doesn't ever ignite in my heart. And so I'll just forever go through the same routine as I always have. But an opportunity presents itself to us tonight. I said Imam al-Jawad is not just Jawad for wealth, anything to do with the dunya. So you ask him that, give me the purity of heart within this dunya. He will give to you. This hadith from the Imam says, I won't go through the Arabic just to save time. He says, the servant shall never reach towards the completeness of Iman, will never reach Iman Kamil, will never have a complete Iman until he has placed his religion over his desires. And the Iman of none is destroyed except that he places his own desires before the religion. Simple. Imam's like, you want perfect Iman? Simple as this. The religion says something, you have an opinion, ignore your opinion. Follow what the religion says. Simple. Because do that, you have perfect Iman. Yeah, but I think, no, there's no room for I think. Nobody cares. Just do what God tells you. If you do that, the light of Iman will come. Because before Iman just doesn't come randomly just like that. Iman has to be earned. First is Islam. What is the prerequisite of Islam? It's in the name, submit. Submit to God. Give up all of your will, then the light of Iman will ignite within your heart. And then the Urafat speak about another realm of Islam and another realm of Iman, 13, 14, until one reaches the realm of Ikhlas, like true sincerity. The first requirement is this, that I submit. I have no desire, I have no opinion, Allah has said this, that's it. I follow. I submit to it and I follow. It says you will not achieve the completeness of Iman until you have learnt to put your religion over your desires. So on this night, when the rizq of Imam al-Jawad is spreading through the mulk and the malakut, what is it that I ask for? The ability to destroy my desires and to bring my desires in line with the deen. If I ask that, then see what will happen. See what doors will open for you on this night. And going forward, what realities will be revealed for you. We pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives our sins. Pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives the sins of our parents. Oh Allah, those of our parents that are alive, give them long lives. Those of our parents that have left this world, give them place next to Ali Muhammad in Jannah. Oh Allah, those who are ill, give them shifa'ah. Those who are in debt, clear their debts. Ya Allah, keep safe the Shia of Ali Muhammad around the world. Ya Allah, destroy the enemies of Tashayyu in whichever form they may come. Ya Allah, give us tawfiq to go on the ziyarat of Ahl al-Bayt this year and every year. Ya Allah, give us tawfiq for Hajj and Umrah this year and every year. Ya Allah, Keep safe our ulama and our maraji' and keep them at the head of our institutions. Ya Allah, hasten the reappearance of Yusuf al-Zahra and allow us to be amongst his true muntadhireen, his true waiters, for the acceptance of these du'as and any of the du'as that you brothers and sisters have brought. Please recite 3 of your loudest salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
محمد وآل محمد صلوات. Okay, and to end, your loudest salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. یوں تو کسی کے در پہ میرا سر جھکا نہیں، یوں تو کسی کے در پہ میرا سر جھکا نہیں، لیکن در تقی پہ جھکا تو اٹھا نہیں، لیکن در تقی پہ جھکا تو اٹھا نہیں، اور غربت میں بھی زمانہ جسے دے لقب جواد، غربت میں بھی زمانہ جسے دے لقب جواد، ایسا سخی زمانے میں اب تک ہوا نہیں، ایسا سخی زمانے میں اب تک ہوا نہیں، اور حق نے اسے بھی ایک محمد بنایا ہے، حق نے سے بھی ایک محمد بنایا ہے، کیا پھر یہ اپنے دور کا ایک مصطفیٰ نہیں؟ کیا پھر یہ اپنے دور کا ایک مصطفیٰ نہیں؟ اور لگتا ہے یہ کہ طور پہ گویا کلیم ہے، لگتا ہے یہ کہ طور پہ گویا کلیم ہے، کچھ اس سے کم تو رتبہ اہل ثنا نہیں، یوں تو کسی کے در پہ میرا سر جھکا نہیں، لیکن در تقی پہ جھکا تو اٹھا نہیں۔ درود پڑھیے محمد اور آل محمد پر۔ یا حضرت عباس روضے پہ بلا لو، بہت دور ہوں تم سے، روضے پہ بلا لو۔ ساتھ میں پڑھیے، یا حضرت عباس روضے پہ بلا لو، بہت دور ہوں تم سے، روضے رو رو کے تیری جالی کو اشکوں سے بھگوں، اب کون ہے تیرے سوا جو حال سناؤں، جو حال سناؤں، للہ بلا لیجیو کچھ حال سناؤں، دل غم سے بھرا ہے تمہیں آ کر میں سناؤں، یا حضرت ماشاءاللہ بلند آواز سے، روضے پہ بلا لو، بہت تم سے، روضے پہ شکوہ ہے تمہیں سے، شکایت ہے تمہیں سے، فریاد میرا کرتا ہوں مولا میں تمہیں سے، مولا میں تمہیں سے، برباد ہوں بے کس ہوں بتا دیجئے مولا، دل غم سے بھرا ہے تمہیں آ کر میں سناؤں۔ سب مل کے، یا حضرت ماشاءاللہ روضے پہ بلا لو، بہت دور ہوں تم سے، روضے پہ دنیا میں نہیں کوئی جسے حال سنائے، روتے ہوئے آنسو کسے مولا ہم دکھائیں، مولا ہم دکھائیں، हम बेकसो लाचार हैं या अब्बासे अलमदार दिल गम से भरा है तुम्हें आकर मैं सुनाऊं या हज़रते अब्बास बुला लो बहुत दूर हूँ तुमसे रोज़े आखिरी बार बुलंद आवाज़ से साथ में या हज़रते अब्बास रोज़े पे बुला लो तुमसे रोज़े पे बुला लो इलाही आमीन बर मोहम्मद व आले मोहम्मद सलावत
बर मोहम्मद व आले मोहम्मद सल्लल्लाहु I will now request upon the chairman of our Jamaat, Brother Rizwan Rahmatullah, please let's welcome him with a loud Nare Salawat.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. My scholar, my elders, my youngsters, my brothers, my sisters, those listening online, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today we are honored to have Dr. Sibten Panjwani join us at our center. I'm sure many of us know who he is, but for those who don't, Dr. Sibten Panjwani obtained qualifications in dentistry, medical ethics, and law, and then served as president of the Shia Isthna Ashari Muslim community of Essex from 1984 to 1990. During that time, under his command, the first Ali Raza Islamic Center in Chelmsford for the community was completed. In 1992, he was elected as vice president of the Council of European Jamaats. In 1991, he was elected as World Federation Executive Councillor, and in 1996, appointed as Secretary General of the World Federation, and worked closely with Marhum Mullah Sahib, focusing on the Khoja dysphoria. He remained in this position until 2003. Presently, Dr. Sibten is a director of the Awakening Project of the Khoja Shia Ithna Asharis, which he founded in 2011, which focuses on the Khoja community development. Currently, he delivers lectures on Gujarati exegesis of the Holy Quran and Islamic bioethics. He is a recipient of the Husseini Medal, which was presented to him at the recent World Federation Conference that was held in July 2022 in Dar es Salaam. His latest publication, entitled The Khoja Shia Ithna Asharis of East Africa, Their Quest for a New Socio-Religious Identity, 1860 to 1960, which we are launching tonight at our center. In this book, Dr. Sibten has dug much deeper to trace the origins of the Khoja community, its twists, its turns, before it finally emerged as the Khoja Shia Ithna Asharis. After recitation of Ziyarat, before recitation of Ziyarat, Dr. Sibten Panjwani will also be autographing the book, should you wish. All proceeds of this book will go to various Africa Federation charities. Dr. Sibten Panjwani, I call upon you to the stage to address our attendees. Bar Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad, salawat.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. Thank you very much, respected scholar, brothers and sisters. Salamun alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you very much, Rizwan, and of course your committee for arranging this book launch in this center. Now, the title of this book is The Khoja Shia Ithna Ashris of East Africa, Their Quest for Socio-Religious Identity. Now, I have taken the arc from 1860 to 1960, a 100-year arc, because we actually formed our community around 1860. Now, this particular book is about our struggle as a faith community. It's about our heritage. It's, of course, about our intellectual struggle, and, of course, a community history of around 160 years. Khoja Shia Ithna Ashri history goes back in Islam for about 700 years. But I have only taken the arc of our community history of 160 years. Now, when it took me, it was a struggle to write this book. It took me 7 years to write this book, research, and then, of course, put pen to paper. Now, when you write a book of this nature, and particularly our community, Khoja Shia Ithna Ashari, we have a lot of dimensions to work with. And so what I needed to do was to bring all these dimensions together and then create a narrative and then create a story that could interest you so that you could then begin to get interested in this book and finish it. Now, I just want to pass a couple of messages so that it gives you an idea as to why this book is important to every Khoja Shia Ithna Ashri. Particularly in our library at home, we should have this book. Couple of messages. The first one is that as you read this book, you will find two historical norms. The first one is our economic struggle as we parted from India in 1830, around 1830s, for economic stability, because times were hard where we were staying, where our great-grandfathers were staying. They were staying in Kutch and Kathiawar, which is now the state of Gujarat. So the first person who came, at least according to the record which is available in East Africa, was Haji Sachupira. He arrived in Zanzibar around 1839. He was only 3 years old. And as his parents were taking him to Kilwa, the dhow drowned. The parents drowned, and he was then taken back to Zanzibar and raised by his uncle. So from 1839, our community, bits and pieces, historically at least we find, we can see existed. And around 1880, as more and more community members came, they then went from Zanzibar to the coast of East Africa, Dar es Salaam, Bagamoyo, Lindi, Kilwa, and then they went to Tabora to Ujiji, from Ujiji to Congo, Burundi, and Rwanda. So our great-grandfathers reached that far in the interior of East Africa. And of course, from Nairobi to from Mombasa to Nairobi, they crossed Lake Victoria into Uganda, and then the interior of Uganda. Now, they came to Zanzibar and they formed the first Khoja Shia Ithna Ashri Mosque and the Jamaat in 1877. So from then onwards, the community, of course, grew and then dispersed itself into the interior of East Africa. And that is the first norm that you will find as you read this book. By 1960, in East Africa, our population was around 10,000 individuals. But we had 1,000 different businesses in East Africa. For every 10 individuals, there was one business. For 2 families, there was one business. This was the extent of our entrepreneurial contribution in East Africa which we called home. At least in 1960, we called it home. That was the first norm. The second norm that you see in this book is the preservation of socio-religious identity. Our great-grandfathers wanted to preserve our faith. They parted from a very comfortable Khoja community, toiled, gave sweat, blood, to form a Khoja Shia Ithna Ashari. And as they formed a rule-based community, Jamaat, the idea was that they wanted to preserve the faith and the community so that we can today enjoy the benefit of a community which they formed almost 160 years ago. And so the question arises, what sort of community would we give to our great-grandchildren and grandchildren? So this was another sort of norm that you would find, that is the preservation of socio-religious identity through a rule-based community. First Jamaat, then of course the regional federations, and then of course the global federation, which is the World Federation. That's the first message. The second message is that as I was going around Jamaats collecting this data, we are not really interested in preserving our archives. We're not. We're not really interested in our history. But others are. When I was in Mashhad and when I was in Al-Mustafa University, as well as my son, who is the editor of this book, when he was at University of Jordan and he was addressing the community history to a non-Khoja audience made up of Iranis, Iraqis, Lebanese, Iranians, Turkey, they were very much interested in a small community of ours. Particularly, they marveled at the idea and the fact that how come that your grandfathers actually changed their religion from a comfortable Khoja-based idea of Shia, Sunni, Hindu, Ismaili, all lumped together, which we call Satpanthi, and that was our belief. But no, they searched for the truth, and they believed that the truth was to become a Shia Ithna Ashari. And so they parted from the main Khoja community, and they formed their own Khoja Shia Ithna Ashari. They marvel at that. And the second thing they marvel at is that how small our community is worldwide. We are not in millions. Mullah Sahib used to tell me that we are only 90,000, and I used to say, well, because we don't have statistics, I'll put the number of prophets that we believe in, 124,000, and I said, I'll put the Ankro, you understand the number, 124,000. But we don't have statistic. He believed that we are only 90,000. I think we're no more than 120. World Federation thinks it's 150,000. But we don't have a proper demographic statistics. But they marvel at the fact that such a small community now has become a global community. And then wherever they settle, they form a Jamaat, and then they build sacred places, and then they provide humanitarian services. And they want to study the models that we have as to why we do such things. So we are not interested in our history, but others marvel at it. Others are. We have a rich history, really rich history, a rich heritage. We are a resilient community. We are an adaptable community. And we are not a Khoja community. We are a Khoja Shia Ithna Ashari community. Now, this is only the first part of the book. I'm writing the second part. This goes from 1960 to 2022. So it's very contemporaneous. Hopefully it should be in the next 2 years. Why am I writing that? Because from 1960 we became a global community. And as a global community, at one time in East Africa, that was our world. But when we came out of that world, which was very narrow, and became a global community, we started to cross boundaries. We crossed religious boundaries, we crossed a language boundary, we crossed ethical boundaries, we crossed cultural boundaries. And as we began to cross these boundaries, we began to have challenges. And one of the biggest challenges we face a small community like ours is, should we become a very thick-walled community with only Khoja Shia Ithnasharis within it? Or should we open it out completely and lose our socio-religious identity? Or we want to preserve our socio-religious identity. And if we want to preserve our socio-religious identity, then we better be passionate about it, and we better draw a line where we want to be as a global community. So that's a challenge, but it's not unsurmountable. It's not beyond our wit that we cannot open up the walls within the community. We can. But that's the challenge, and these are the challenges that I'll be tackling in part 2 of my book. Now, this particular book is a book about me and you. It's a story about you, your family, your grandfathers, grandmothers, and our community. And it is a book that should be in every house. It's only 15 pounds. It doesn't go in my pocket, by the way. It goes to Africa Federation and for their charity, as Rizwan Bhai has said. So if anyone wants to have my signature, I'm sure after 5-10 years it will be even more in economic terms. So I'll be available, but I hope that gives you an idea of what this book is about and why you should have it and why you should be proud of the fact that you are a Khoja Shia Ithna Ashari. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء، السلام عليك يا خديجة الكبرى، السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى، السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله الحسين، وعلى 9 المعصومين من ذريتك، علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والحجة بن الحسن، نجى الله تعالى وفرجك وسهل الله مخرجك وظهور الأمر، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كل وليك الجديد حسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة، وكان حافظا يومنا حتى فيها طويلة.